5 rival gunmen storm the restaurant, guns drawn for the Mafia boss, but before the first trigger's pulled, the quiet waitress by the bar moves like a ghost. In 12 heart-stopping minutes, she turns a slaughter into a blood-soaked miracle, leaving everyone asking the same question. Who the hell is she really? If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. On a cold autumn night in downtown Chicago, beneath the golden glow of crystal chandeliers at Waitress, 5 men walked in to erase a name from the city's underworld ledger. Their target, Wayne Harrison, a 38-year-old titan whose tailored suits and inked arms told stories of wealth built on blood and silence. They were coordinated, masked, and silent professionals moving with military precision. They expected armed guards, perhaps surveillance systems, maybe even a desperate fight. What they didn't expect, what their meticulous planning could never have accounted for, was the quiet waitress standing near the bar, her hand already moving toward the Mafia boss before the first gun was raised. Her name was Maria Owens. They saw a servant. They were about to meet a ghost. This isn't a story about a gang war. It's the story of how one woman's buried past detonated into the present, and in the space of 12 minutes, shifted the balance of power in a city that devours the weak. Waitress wasn't the kind of restaurant that appeared on reservation apps or Instagram feeds. It was a relic of Chicago's Gilded Age, a sanctuary of discretion nestled on a rain-slicked street where the city's untouchable men conducted business in hushed tones. Its patrons were the kind whose names never appeared in headlines, only in police files and offshore accounts. On this particular Tuesday, the rain fell like ash, painting distorted reflections across the restaurant's floor-to-ceiling windows. Inside, the atmosphere was one of calculated elegance. Warm amber light caught the edges of polished silverware and stemmed crystal. The air carried the scent of aged leather, seared wagyu, and money that had long forgotten how to apologize. And through this carefully orchestrated calm moved Maria Owens, a phantom in a crisp black vest and white shirt. To the casual observer, Maria was perfectly unremarkable, and that was precisely her design. At 27, she had perfected the art of invisibility. Her movements were economical, precise, almost balletic in their efficiency. She refilled water glasses before the ice began to settle, cleared plates the instant a knife was set down, and anticipated when a patron would need their check with an almost preternatural awareness. She was, by all measurable standards, an exemplary waitress. But beneath the practiced calm, Maria was a surveillance system in human form. She didn't just serve patrons, she dissected them. The banker in booth 3, Mr. Castellano, always tapped his ring finger twice before lying to his business partner. The couple near the wine cellar, the Reeves, were having an affair, evidenced by the way their hands never quite touched above the table. Maria noticed everything. The micro-expressions, the hesitations, the tells that revealed what people tried to hide. It was a skill refined not in hospitality training, but in the unforgiving crucible of a past she'd spent years trying to bury. Around her neck, hidden beneath her uniform, hung a small silver chain with a single dog tag worn smooth from years of anxious touch. It was the only piece of her former life she allowed herself to keep. At precisely 8:30 p.m., the heavy door swung open with deliberate weight. Wayne Harrison entered, and the room's energy shifted like a tide pulling back before a storm. Conversations didn't stop. These people were too disciplined for that, but voices lowered, eyes flicked, shoulders tensed. Harrison wasn't just wealthy. He was architecture, the invisible framework holding Chicago's criminal economy in place. As the silent king of the city's underworld, he controlled territories that law enforcement couldn't touch and business deals that governments pretended not to see. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in black on black. His sleeves rolled just high enough to reveal the edges of intricate tattoo stories written in ink and violence. But there was something else in his sharp, storm-gray eyes tonight. Exhaustion, the kind that wealth and power could never erase. He didn't travel with bodyguards, a fact that had always struck Maria as either supremely confident or dangerously naive. He came here alone, every second Tuesday. He didn't come for the cuisine, which was impeccable, or the service, which was invisible. He came for memory, for a ghost named Isabella, his late wife, whose favorite table was booth 7. Maria approached his table, notepad in hand, movements smooth as water. "Good evening, Mr. Harrison. Can I start you with something?" He didn't look up from the menu he'd long since memorized. "McAllen, 25. Neat." His voice was low, textured with authority and smoke. "Of course." As she turned to leave, he spoke again, quieter this time, almost hesitant. "Miss Owens." Maria stopped, turning back slowly. It was rare for him to acknowledge her by name. He lifted his eyes then, and they locked onto hers with the intensity of a man used to reading threats in shadows. "The osso buco tonight. Is it as good as last month?" Maria held his gaze, steady and unflinching. "Chef Moretti is in exceptional form tonight, sir. I believe it will exceed your expectations." Something flickered across his face, approval perhaps, or the ghost of a smile before it vanished behind the mask. "Good." Maria retreated toward the bar, but her pulse had already begun to shift. Something felt wrong. Not Harrison, he was the constant. It was the air itself. A low-frequency hum beneath the surface. The way the rain had stopped too suddenly. The way the kitchen sounds seemed just a decibel too quiet. At the bar, as she poured the scotch into crystal, she caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Her face was calm, professional, empty, but her eyes told a different story. Then the door opened again. 5 men stepped inside, and Maria Owens stopped being invisible. If your heart's already racing and your chest feels tight for Maria, don't look away now. Stories like this vanish fast, just like the woman who's about to rewrite her fate. Hit subscribe before she disappears again. The 5 men moved like water through stone fluid. Silent. Inevitable. Maria's hand froze mid-pour, the scotch threatening to overflow the crystal tumbler. Her eyes tracked them in the mirror's reflection. Tactical boots disguised under long coats, hands positioned at their sides in a way that screamed military training, shoulders aligned in a formation she'd seen 100 times before. Formation Delta. Breach and contain. Her heart didn't race. It slowed. Every sense sharpened to surgical precision. She counted the seconds between their steps, calculated the angles of their approach, mapped every exit in her peripheral vision. 3 seconds until they reached the center of the dining room. 5 until someone screamed. 7 until Wayne Harrison realized he was already dead. The lead man's hand moved toward his coat. Maria's body decided before her mind could catch up. She grabbed the scotch, turned from the bar, and walked, not ran directly toward booth 7. Her movements were measured, practiced, the same rhythm she'd used for 3 years serving the city's elite. No one noticed. No one ever noticed Maria Owens until it was too late. "Mr. Harrison," she said, her voice steady as bedrock as she set the glass before him. "I need you to trust me, right now." His eyes snapped to hers, reading the urgency beneath her calm. "What? Down. Now." The first shot shattered the chandelier. Crystal exploded into 1,000 glittering fragments, raining down like frozen stars as screams erupted across the restaurant. Patrons dove under tables, chairs toppled, the carefully maintained illusion of civilization disintegrating in an instant. But Maria was already moving. She grabbed Wayne's shoulder and pulled hard, dragging him from the booth as bullets punched through velvet and wood, where his head had been seconds before. He was heavier than she expected, a solid muscle beneath the expensive suit, but her grip was iron. She'd pulled men twice his size from burning vehicles in another life. "Stay low," she hissed, guiding him behind the overturned mahogany table. Her eyes were everywhere at once, tracking the shooters, calculating trajectories, identifying cover points. The gunmen fanned out with military precision, sealing exits, controlling sightlines. Professionals, not thugs, not amateurs, soldiers. Wayne's breath came in sharp gasps, his hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded, his voice a mixture of shock and something else. Respect, maybe, or fear. Maria didn't answer. She was listening, counting. The shooters were using suppressed weapons, coordinated fire patterns, communicating through subtle hand signals. She recognized the tactics because she'd written half the manual they were following. 3 shooters advancing from the front, 1 covering the kitchen exit, 1 by the main door. But they'd made a mistake. They'd assumed the staff were irrelevant. A shadow moved to her left, one of the gunmen circling wide, trying to flank their position. Maria's hand shot out, grabbing a fallen wine bottle by the neck. The glass was heavy, Italian, expensive. It would do. She waited, breathing, counting, timing. The gunman rounded the corner, weapon raised, eyes scanning for Wayne. He never looked down. Maria surged upward like a coiled spring. the bottle arcing through the air with devastating precision. It caught him across the temple with a sickening crack, and he crumpled without a sound. She caught his body before it hit the ground, lowering him silently, already stripping the weapon from his hands. A Glock 19, suppressor attached, one in the chamber. The entire movement took less than 3 seconds. Wayne stared at her, eyes wide, as she checked the magazine with practiced efficiency. "You're not a waitress." Maria's jaw tightened. "Not tonight." Another burst of gunfire raked across their position, splinters of wood exploding around them. Maria returned fire 3 precise shots, forcing the shooters back into cover. Her movements were automatic, muscle memory from a life she'd tried to forget. Breathe, aim, squeeze, breathe. She'd done this in Kandahar, in Baghdad, in places that didn't have names on maps, but never in a restaurant. Never to protect a man like Wayne Harrison. "They're not here for money," Wayne said, his voice steadier now, the initial shock giving way to cold calculation. "They're here for the drive." Maria's eyes flicked to him. "What drive?" "Later. Right now we need to." Glass shattered from the kitchen. The 4th gunman was flanking. Maria's mind raced through options. The front exit was covered. The kitchen was compromised. They were boxed in, outgunned, and the sirens she could hear in the distance were still minutes away. Minutes they didn't have. She looked at Wayne Harrison, this man whose empire was built on violence, whose hands were stained with blood she couldn't see, and made a decision that would change everything. "Can you run?" He nodded. "Then when I move, you move. Don't think. Don't hesitate. Just follow." She didn't wait for confirmation. Maria broke from cover, firing as she moved, her body remembering patterns she'd drilled 10,000 times. Advance, cover, reload. The gunman responded, but she was already 3 steps ahead, using the chaos she'd created to carve a path toward the wine cellar, the one exit they hadn't covered. Behind her, Wayne Harrison ran, and for the first time in 3 years, Maria Owens felt the weight of who she used to be settle back onto her shoulders like an old, familiar coat. The storm had broken, and there was no going back. The wine cellar door was hidden behind a velvet curtain, a service entrance most patrons never knew existed. Maria kicked it open with her heel, weapon still trained on the chaos behind them. Wayne stumbled through first, his shoulder clipping the doorframe as bullets chewed through the wall inches from his head. Maria followed, slamming the door shut and jamming a broken chair leg through the handle. It wouldn't hold long, 30 seconds, maybe 40 if they were lucky. The cellar stretched before them, a narrow corridor lined with vintage bottles worth more than most people's houses, lit by dim emergency lighting that cast everything in shades of amber and shadow. The air was cool, dense with the smell of oak and fermentation. Wayne pressed his back against the wall, chest heaving, his tailored suit now torn and dust-covered. "You want to tell me what the hell just happened up there?" Maria was already moving deeper into the cellar, her eyes scanning for alternate exits, structural weaknesses, anything she could use. "You were about to die. I stopped it. That's not what I'm asking." She spun to face him, the Glock held low but ready. In the dim light, her features were harder now, all the practiced softness of the waitress stripped away. This was the real Maria Owens, the one she'd buried 3 years ago beneath smiles and drink orders. Those men up there? They move like Tier 1 operators. Formation, Delta Breach Protocol, suppressed weapons, coordinated fire patterns. That's not street gang execution. That's military. Wayne's eyes narrowed. "And you know this because..." Maria's silence was answer enough. Behind them, something heavy slammed against the cellar door once, twice, the chair leg beginning to splinter. Maria's mind shifted into overdrive, counting seconds between impacts, calculating breach time. 15 seconds, maybe 20. "The drive," she said, her voice clipped and professional. "What's on it?" Wayne hesitated, and in that pause, Maria saw something she recognized. The weight of impossible choices. "Insurance," he finally said. "Names, accounts, deals. Evidence on every major syndicate in Chicago. I was going to use it to broker peace." Peace. The word tasted bitter on her tongue. "You're a crime lord trying to play peacemaker." "I'm a businessman trying to stop a war." His voice was edged with something raw desperation. Maybe. Or exhaustion. "My wife died in the crossfire of someone else's vendetta. I won't let this city burn the way she did." The door shuddered violently. 10 seconds. Maria's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind her eyes, a memory she'd kept locked away. Her brother Elias, bleeding out on cold pavement while sirens wailed in the distance. He'd died in Chicago's gang wars too. Collateral damage. A name in a police report no one bothered to remember. She'd blamed Wayne Harrison for that death. For 3 years, she'd served him drinks and smiled politely while hatred simmered beneath her skin. But looking at him now, really looking, she saw not the monster she'd constructed, but a man drowning in the same grief that had nearly destroyed her. "Where's the drive?" she asked. "Briefcase, booth 7. He laughed, sharp and humorless. Probably riddled with bullets by now. The door splintered. 5 seconds. Maria grabbed a bottle from the nearest rack, a 1947 Chateau d'Yquem, worth $30,000, and hurled it against the far wall. Glass exploded, amber liquid pooling across the stone floor. She grabbed another, then another, creating chaos, obscuring sightlines, buying seconds they didn't have. "Move," she commanded, pushing Wayne toward the back of the cellar where a ventilation grate was set into the ceiling. "Can you reach that?" He didn't question. He jumped, fingers catching the metal frame, pulling himself up with surprising strength. The grate gave way with a screech of old metal. Maria fired twice at the door, not to hit anything, but to buy time, then followed Wayne up into the ventilation shaft. The space was cramped, barely wide enough for shoulders. The metal was cold and slick with condensation. Behind them, the cellar door exploded inward, and voices filled the space below, harsh, professional, coordinated. "They're in the shaft," someone said. Not panicked, tactical. Maria and Wayne crawled in darkness, elbows and knees scraping metal, every movement echoing like thunder in the confined space. She could feel her heart now, not racing, but steady, powerful, alive. This was who she'd been before Waitress. Before the smiles and the uniforms and the careful invisibility. This was the woman trained by Victor Reyes, the ghost who'd operated in places where mistakes meant body bags. And somewhere deep in her muscle memory, buried beneath 3 years of trying to forget, her body remembered what her mind had tried to erase. How to survive when survival seemed impossible. They emerged into a service corridor maintenance access for the building's infrastructure. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in sterile white. Wayne collapsed against the wall, breathing hard, his face pale. "Where did you learn to move like that?" Maria checked the Glock's magazine. 4 rounds left. Not enough. Another life. What life? She met his eyes, those storm-gray eyes that had never really seen her until tonight. The kind that trains you to recognize Formation Delta. The kind that teaches you 8 ways to kill someone with a wine bottle. The kind, her voice caught, the kind that got my brother killed 3 years ago. "In your war, Mr. Harrison. In your city." The words hung between them like smoke. And in the distance, growing closer, the sound of tactical boots echoed through the corridor. Wayne's face went still. The exhaustion in his eyes replaced by something sharper recognition, maybe, or the beginning of understanding. "Your brother," he said quietly. "What was his name?" "Elias Owens." Maria's voice was flat, controlled, each syllable a blade. "He died on the south side 3 years ago. The report called it gang crossfire. I called it murder." Wayne's jaw tightened. "I remember that night. 6 dead, including 2 civilians. It was the Alvarez syndicate, retaliating against you." Maria's grip on the Glock tightened. "My brother was in the wrong place at the wrong time because of a war you started. A war I inherited." Wayne pushed off the wall, standing despite the pain radiating through his shoulder. "I didn't ask for this empire, Miss Owens. I was a contractor who married the wrong woman, the right woman, and when her father died, everything he built fell on me like a collapsing building." The tactical boots were getting closer, their rhythm steady and methodical. Maria calculated they had maybe 90 seconds before the shooters found this corridor. She should move, should run, but instead, she stood frozen, 3 years of buried rage threatening to surface. "You think that absolves you?" Her voice cracked. "You think saying you didn't ask for it makes my brother any less dead?" "No." Wayne's eyes held hers, unflinching. "But neither does blaming me when I wasn't the one who pulled the trigger." The words hit like a physical blow. Because he was right. Maria had spent 3 years constructing a simple narrative. Wayne Harrison was the monster, and monsters deserved no mercy. It was easier that way. Cleaner. But standing here in this sterile corridor, covered in dust and blood that wasn't hers, she saw the cracks in her own story. 60 seconds. "The drive," Maria said, forcing her mind back to tactical reality. If it contains evidence on all 5 syndicates, why haven't you used it? Wayne moved to the corridor's end, peering around the corner. Empty. For now. Because using it means war. Every syndicate would turn on each other, trying to cover their exposure. The city would become a battlefield. He turned back to her. Isabella, my wife, she died because of unchecked violence. I won't honor her memory by creating more. So you were going to what? Trade peace for leverage? I was going to prove that mutual destruction benefits no one. Show them the cost of continuing this cycle. His voice hardened. But someone leaked my plan. Someone united the 5 syndicates long enough to send professionals to kill me and retrieve that drive. Maria's tactical mind was already working through the implications. 5 rival organizations don't just unite overnight. They'd need a coordinator. Someone they all trust. Or fear. 45 seconds. The pieces were falling into place, the military precision of the attack, the coordinated timing, the professional execution. This wasn't random. This was planned by someone who understood both the criminal underworld and tactical operations. Someone who moved in both worlds. A memory flickered. Victor Reyes, her former commanding officer, the man who'd recruited her from military intelligence into something darker. He'd trained her in more than combat, he'd taught her how power really worked, how the right information could move empires. And 3 years ago, right before she disappeared, he'd told her something she'd never forgotten. The real players don't choose sides, Maria. They create the board. We need to move, Maria said, pushing the thought aside. But it lingered like smoke in a closed room. They moved through the service corridors, Maria leading with practiced efficiency. She'd mapped this building's infrastructure in her first week at Waitress, not consciously, but instinctively. The way she'd mapped every environment since Victor had trained her to see exits before entrances, weapons before decorations. 30 seconds. There's a loading dock 2 floors down, Maria said. Emergency exit through the parking garage. If we can reach it. The radio on her hip, the one she'd taken from the downed shooter, crackled to life. A voice, distorted but professional. Targets mobile. Sector 3. Converging. Then another voice. Familiar. Impossible. Copy. I'll take point. Remember Harrison alive if possible. The woman is irrelevant. Maria's world tilted. That voice. She knew that voice the way she knew her own heartbeat, her own breathing. Victor Reyes. Wayne saw her face change. What is it? The coordinator, Maria whispered, the Glock suddenly feeling heavier in her hand. The one who united the syndicates. I know who it is. Who? The tactical boots rounded the corner, 3 shooters in formation, weapons raised. Maria and Wayne dove in opposite directions. As bullets sparked off metal pipes and concrete, Maria returned fire 2 shots, forcing them back, but her hands were shaking now. Not from fear, from recognition. Because she'd seen those movement patterns before. She'd drilled them. And the man who'd taught her was the same man hunting them now. Wayne scrambled beside her, pressing against a support column. We're pinned. If you've got a plan, now would be. Victor Reyes, Maria said, her voice hollow. My former commanding officer, the man who trained me, the man I thought was dead. She met Wayne's eyes, and in that moment, he saw past the waitress, past the soldier, to the broken woman underneath. He's not here to kill you for the syndicates. He's here because of me. The shooting stopped. An eerie silence filled the corridor. Then Victor's voice echoed through the space, calm and measured. Hello, Ghost. It's been a long time. The voice echoed through the concrete corridors like a sermon in an empty cathedral, familiar, paternal, and utterly terrifying. Maria's breath caught in her throat, 3 years of carefully constructed distance collapsing in an instant. Victor Reyes stepped into view, and the world narrowed to just the 2 of them. He looked exactly as she remembered and nothing like she'd expected. Still tall, still lean, but older, now silver, threading through his dark hair, new lines carved around his eyes. He wasn't wearing tactical gear like his men, just a simple black coat over dark clothes, hands empty and visible. Unthreatened, unthreatening. That's what made him dangerous. Maria Owens, he said, her name rolling off his tongue like a benediction. I told them you were good. I didn't tell them you were still alive. Maria's Glock was steady, trained center mass, but her voice betrayed her. You're supposed to be dead. The mission in Caracas, the report said. Reports say a lot of things. Victor's smile was sad, almost apologetic. You of all people should know that. Wayne shifted beside her, confusion and calculation warring across his features. You 2 know each other. Know each other? Victor laughed, a sound Maria remembered from training exercises, from debriefings, from the moment he'd pinned her brother's dog tag into her palm at Elias's funeral. I created her, molded her, turned a grieving girl with potential into the most effective intelligence operative I ever trained. His eyes never left Maria's. She was my finest work. The words struck like physical blows. Maria's jaw clenched. I was your weapon. You were my legacy. Victor took a step forward. His men remained in position, weapons ready but not raised. Professionals waiting for orders. And then you vanished. 3 years of silence. I mourned you, Maria. I genuinely mourned you. Save it. Maria's voice was ice over boiling rage. You don't get to mourn what you destroyed. Destroyed? Victor's expression shifted, hurt. Genuine or performed, she couldn't tell anymore. I saved you. After Elias died, you were spiraling, self-destructive. I gave you purpose, direction, a way to channel that pain into something meaningful. You gave me targets. Maria's finger trembled on the trigger. You gave me missions that made me forget I was human. Wayne's voice cut through the tension. Touching reunion. But someone want to explain why a dead intelligence officer is coordinating a hit on me? Victor's attention shifted, and for the first time, he truly looked at Wayne Harrison. Ah, the Mafia king. You're less impressive than your reputation suggests. He clasped his hands behind his back, utterly casual. To answer your question, I'm not here for you, Mr. Harrison. Not really. The 5 syndicates paying me? They think they're retrieving leverage and eliminating a threat. But they're pawns. Pawns in what game? Wayne demanded. Power consolidation. Victor's tone was professorial, explaining a simple concept to slow students. Chicago's underworld is fractured 5 syndicates in constant conflict, wasting resources, drawing attention. I offered them what they couldn't achieve alone. Unity through a common enemy. You, Mr. Harrison. The man trying to broker peace when what they really need is a king. Maria's blood ran cold. You're going to take over. Not me. Victor's eyes returned to her, and in them, she saw something that made her stomach turn. Pride. Us. That's why I leaked your location to the syndicates. Why I orchestrated this entire evening. I needed to see if you still had it. The instinct, the training, the will to survive. He spread his hands. And you exceeded every expectation. The way you moved, protected him, adapted. His voice softened. You're ready, Maria. Ready to stop hiding behind aprons and wine glasses. Ready to take your place beside me. The corridor seemed to shrink. Maria's world reduced to the man before her, the man who'd trained her, manipulated her, shaped her into a weapon and called it love. You killed my brother. The words dropped like stones into still water. Victor's expression didn't change. I gave the order, yes. Wayne stiffened beside her, but Maria's hand remained steady. Why? Because Elias was compromised. Victor's voice carried no apology, no regret. He'd been feeding information to the Alvarez syndicate, trying to buy protection for you both. He didn't understand that loyalty to family makes you weak. I taught you that lesson the only way you'd learn through loss. Maria's vision blurred. 3 years of grief, of guilt, of believing her brother died because of Wayne Harrison's war. All of it was a lie. A orchestrated lesson. Victor had killed Elias not as collateral damage, but as curriculum. You murdered him to teach me? Her voice was barely a whisper. I freed you from attachment. Victor took another step closer. And look what you became. Look what you still are, even after 3 years of pretending to be ordinary. The moment violence erupted, you didn't freeze. You didn't run. You moved like the ghost I trained you to be. Behind them, the tactical team remained motionless, waiting. Wayne's hand found Maria's arm, not restraining, just present, an anchor in the storm. Victor extended his hand. Come back, Maria. Help me reshape this city. We'll build something your brother's death actually meant something for. Not chaos, not war, but order. True order. The gun in Maria's hand felt impossibly heavy. The syndicates are already fracturing. Victor continued. By dawn, they'll turn on each other. And in the chaos, we'll establish real control. But I need you. I've always needed you. Maria's finger rested on the trigger. One squeeze. That's all it would take. The man who killed her brother. The man who shaped her into a killer. The man who still, even now, saw her as his creation rather than her own person. Tell me, Maria. Victor's voice was soft, almost tender. Who are you, really? The waitress? Or the weapon? If betrayal like this twists your chest, remember the quiet ones always bleed the deepest. Don't just watch. Stand with her. Subscribe before Maria's truth gets buried again. Maria's hand trembled not from fear, but from the sheer weight of 3 years crashing down on her in a single moment. The dog tag beneath her uniform suddenly felt like a noose, cold metal pressing against her sternum with every breath. Elias didn't betray anyone, she said, her voice raw. He was trying to protect me. Protection born from weakness. Victor's tone remained maddeningly calm, clinical. He went to the Alvarez syndicate because he couldn't accept what you'd become. He wanted to pull you out of intelligence work, take you away from me. He was going to compromise everything we'd built. He was my brother. The words tore from her throat. He was an anchor dragging you down. Victor stepped closer, his men still holding position. Maria, you have to understand I gave you a gift that night. I removed the one thing that would have destroyed you eventually. Family makes you vulnerable. Love makes you weak. I taught you to be strong. Wayne's voice cut through, sharp with disgust. You're insane. Victor's eyes flicked to him dismissively. You're a crime lord lecturing me about morality? You've built an empire on violence and call it business. At least I'm honest about what I am. I never pretended murder was mentorship, Wayne shot back. Maria's mind was fragmenting, memories flooding back with visceral clarity. Elias at 17, teaching her to drive in their father's beat-up Honda. Elias at 23, holding her while she cried after their mother's funeral. Elias at 25, his face twisted with worry when she came home from her first classified mission, unable to tell him where she'd been or what she'd done. And Victor's voice, always there in the background. Compartmentalize, Maria. Emotion is the enemy of efficiency. I remember the night he died, Maria said, her voice hollow. I was on assignment in Detroit. You called me personally, told me there'd been an incident, that Elias was caught in crossfire between Harrison's people and the Alvarez syndicate. She looked at Victor, really looked at him. You held me while I cried. You told me it wasn't my fault. It wasn't, Victor said gently. It was necessary. You held me, Maria repeated, her voice breaking. You comforted me. And the whole time, you knew. You'd given the order. You'd watched him die. I did what needed to be done to complete your transformation. Victor's expression was almost paternal. And it worked, Maria. You became unstoppable after that. No more hesitation. No more divided loyalties. Just pure, focused purpose. Wayne shifted beside her, and she could feel his rage radiating like heat. But he stayed silent, letting this moment belong to her. I blamed myself for years, Maria continued, each word a knife she was turning inward. I thought if I'd been there, if I'd protected him better, if I'd left intelligence work sooner. Her voice cracked. I blamed Wayne Harrison. I watched him every second Tuesday for 3 years, serving him drinks and smiling, while inside I was planning how I'd make him pay for my brother's death. And now you know the truth. Victor opened his hands, as if offering absolution. Harrison isn't your enemy. He never was. I am the only one who's ever truly understood you, Maria. The only one who's ever pushed you to become what you were meant to be. Maria's Glock lowered slightly, not from acceptance, but from exhaustion. What I was meant to be. I was meant to be Elias's sister. I was meant to grow old, arguing with him about politics and watching him become a father. I was meant to be. Her voice shattered. Human. You're something better, Victor insisted. You're evolved, transcendent. Look at what you did tonight protecting Harrison, neutralizing trained operators, adapting to impossible odds. That's not humanity, Maria. That's artistry. The corridor fell silent, except for the distant drip of water through pipes, the hum of fluorescent lights. Maria's reflection caught in a metal panel, a ghost in a torn uniform, blood on her hands, eyes hollow with grief. I have a question, she said quietly. Victor smiled. Anything. The night Elias died, did he know it was coming? Did he see you before? She couldn't finish. Victor's expression softened with something that might have been regret. He called your name. At the end, he wanted you to know he loved you. The world tilted. Maria's knees nearly buckled, but Wayne's hand was suddenly there, steadying her. Through the haze of grief, she felt his presence solid, real, unexpectedly gentle. You're telling me this why? Maria whispered. To prove you were there? To prove you killed him personally? To prove I know what it cost you, Victor said. And I did it anyway. because I believed in what you could become more than I mourned what you'd lose. That's real love, Maria. Not the sentimental attachment that weakens, but the hard choice that forges strength. Maria raised the Glock again, and this time her hand was steady as stone. You're wrong about one thing. What's that? Love doesn't make you weak. Her voice was ice and fire. It makes you dangerous, because now I know exactly what I'm fighting for. Not for Harrison, not for the city. For Elias, for the brother you murdered because you were too much of a coward to understand that some bonds can't be broken even by death. Victor's smile faded. Maria, my name, she said, is not your weapon anymore. The tactical team's weapons rose in unison, and Maria Owens pulled the trigger. The shot exploded through the corridor like thunder in a tomb, but Maria hadn't aimed for Victor's chest. The bullet tore through the concrete wall 6 inches from his head, sending fragments of stone and dust cascading around him. A warning shot. A declaration. Victor didn't flinch. His tactical team did, weapons snapping up, fingers tightening on triggers, but his raised hand stopped them cold. Stand down, he commanded, his voice carrying absolute authority. Maria's Glock remained trained on him, smoke still curling from the barrel. The next one goes through your knee, then your other knee. Then we'll see how philosophical you are about pain when you're bleeding on the floor. You won't shoot me, Victor said, but there was uncertainty now, a crack in his certainty. 3 years ago, you would have been right. Maria's voice was steady, lethal. But you taught me something important, Victor. You taught me that sentiment is weakness, that hard choices define strength. So thank you, because right now, the only thing stopping me from putting a bullet in your skull is that you're more useful alive. Wayne moved beside her, clutching his wounded shoulder. Blood seeped through his fingers, his face pale but focused. We're not getting out of here, he said quietly. Not with his team blocking every exit. I know, Maria replied, not taking her eyes off Victor. Victor's expression shifted, reading the tactical reality, the stalemate they'd reached. You're cornered, Maria. Outgunned, outmaneuvered. This ends one way. You're right, Maria said. It does. She reached into her vest pocket with her free hand, pulling out her phone. Her thumb moved across the screen without looking, but not the way you think. Victor's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? Changing the game. Maria's thumb hovered over the send button. That drive you want so badly? The one with evidence on all 5 syndicates? I know where it is. And I just sent the exact location plus photos of your team to every major news outlet in Chicago. Also the FBI. Also internal affairs. She smiled, cold and sharp. In about 3 minutes, this building will be swarming with people you can't shoot your way through. The lie was perfect because it was layered with truth. She had no access to the drive, no photos, nothing. But Victor didn't know that. And the moment of doubt, that flicker of uncertainty in his eyes, was all she needed. Victor's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Am I? Maria tilted her head. You taught me to always have leverage, Victor. To never enter a situation without an exit strategy. Did you really think 3 years of pouring wine made me forget? The tactical team shifted nervously, glancing at their commander. They were professionals, but professionals understood when a mission was compromised, when extraction became more important than completion. Wayne caught on, playing along. She's been photographing every patron, every transaction in that restaurant for months, he added, his voice carrying the weight of truth mixed with fiction. Insurance. You're not the only one who understands leverage. Victor's expression hardened, but Maria saw it, the calculation, the cost-benefit analysis. He was deciding whether the risk was worth the reward. You've changed, Victor said finally. You killed my brother, Maria replied. What did you expect? In the distance, sirens wailed. Real ones this time, getting closer. Someone from the restaurant must have called 911. The timing was perfect, chaos greeting chaos. Victor made his decision. Fall back, he told his team. We're leaving. Sir? One of the operatives hesitated. Now. Victor's voice was steel. The tactical team retreated with the same precision they'd arrived with, smooth, coordinated, professional. But Victor remained, standing in the corridor like a monument to everything Maria had tried to escape. This isn't over, he said. I know. Maria's Glock didn't waver. The syndicates will tear each other apart without the drive. The city will burn. Then it burns, Maria said flatly. Better that than your version of peace. Victor studied her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression, not quite pride, not quite regret. Something more complicated. I made you into this, Maria, whether you admit it or not. No. Maria's voice was quiet but absolute. Elias made me into this. Every value he taught me. Every moment he chose love over efficiency. Every time he put family before mission, that's what made me who I am. You just tried to kill it. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them. But you failed, Victor. Because I'm still standing, and I'm still choosing to let you walk away. Mercy? Victor's eyebrow arched. That doesn't sound like the weapon I created. It's not mercy. Maria's smile was cold. It's strategy. Because now you get to live knowing that your finest work rejected everything you stand for. That the student surpassed the teacher by choosing to be human instead of a ghost. The sirens were deafening now, just outside the building. Victor turned to leave, then paused. He did love you, you know. Elias. His last words were your name. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. I gave you that truth because you deserved it. Not as a weapon, as a gift. Then let me give you one in return, Maria said. If I ever see you again, I won't hesitate. Next time, it won't be a warning shot. Victor nodded, once a gesture of respect between equals, then disappeared into the shadows, his footsteps fading like smoke. Maria's Glock finally lowered, her hand trembling now that the adrenaline was crashing. Wayne sagged against the wall, his breathing shallow. We need to move, he said. Before the police. Before they find us with guns and bodies upstairs. Maria finished. She grabbed his arm, supporting his weight. Can you walk? Do I have a choice? Not really. They moved through the service corridors, two damaged people holding each other up, sirens screaming behind them. Maria's mind was already calculating exits, alibis, next moves. But beneath the tactical thinking was something raw, the image of Elias calling her name in his final moments. Victor had given her truth wrapped in cruelty, and now she had to decide what to do with it. The loading dock was chaos incarnate, flashing red and blue lights reflecting off wet pavement. Police radios crackling static into the night air. Officers swarming the building's perimeter like ants on a disturbed hill. Maria and Wayne pressed against the cold concrete wall, hidden in the shadows between two industrial dumpsters, breathing hard. Wayne's shoulder was bleeding worse now, crimson soaking through his shirt in an expanding bloom. His face had gone pale, jaw clenched against the pain. We can't stay here, he whispered. I know. Maria's eyes scanned the scene with tactical precision. 12 officers visible, probably more inside. 2 patrol cars blocking the main exit. An ambulance idling near the entrance. Paramedics standing ready for casualties that would never come. Victor's team had been too efficient, too clean. Your plan? Wayne asked. Working on it. Work faster. A voice crackled over the police radio of a nearby officer. All units. Suspects may be armed and extremely dangerous. 5 male subjects, military-grade weapons, 1 female civilian possibly taken hostage. Maria's jaw tightened. Hostage. Of course that's how they'd frame it. The quiet waitress couldn't possibly be the one fighting back. Wayne saw her expression. What are you thinking? That I'm tired of being underestimated. She checked the Glock, 2 rounds left. Not enough. Never enough. And that we need to split up. Absolutely not. Listen to me. Maria turned to face him fully, her voice urgent but controlled. You're bleeding. You're recognizable. Every cop in Chicago knows Wayne Harrison's face. But me? She gestured to herself, torn uniform, dust-covered, anonymous. I'm nobody. I can walk right past them. And leave me here to what? Bleed out behind a dumpster? No. Maria reached into her pocket, pulling out her phone. You're going to call your people. Your real people. Not the ones at the restaurant, the ones you trust with your life. Tell them where you are. Tell them to bring a doctor, not a hospital. Can you do that? Wayne's eyes searched hers. You're really just going to walk away? I'm going to disappear, Maria corrected. Like I should have 3 years ago before I convinced myself serving you scotch was some kind of penance. She paused, something shifting in her expression. I blamed you for Elias's death. I watched you every Tuesday, planning how I'd make you suffer. But you didn't kill him. You didn't even know him. Maria. Victor was right about one thing, she continued, her voice rough with emotion. I've been hiding, not from the law or from danger from myself, from the woman I became after Elias died. I I thought if I could be normal enough, quiet enough, invisible enough, I could undo what Victor made me into. She met his eyes. But tonight proved I can't run from what I am. Wayne grabbed her wrist with his good hand, his grip surprisingly strong despite the blood loss. What you are is someone who saved my life. Multiple times. Against impossible odds. His voice was fierce. Don't let Victor's poison make you think that's something to be ashamed of. The words hit deeper than Maria expected. She looked down at his hand on her wrist, tattooed, scarred, belonging to a man whose empire was built on violence. Yet here he was, bleeding and cornered, telling her she was more than a weapon. The drive, she said quietly. The one with evidence on the syndicates. You said you wanted to use it for peace. I did. I do. Then use it. Maria pulled her wrist free gently. Because Victor was right about something else too, this city is going to burn. The syndicates will turn on each other now that they know about the drive. You're the only one with leverage to stop it. And you? Maria stood, brushing dust from her ruined uniform. I'm going to finish what I should have finished 3 years ago. Which is? Deciding who Maria Owens really is. She looked down at him one last time. For what it's worth, Mr. Harrison, I'm sorry. For the hatred. For the 3 years of silent blame. Elias wouldn't have wanted that. He would have wanted me to see people clearly, not through the lens of grief. Wayne's expression softened. He sounds like he was a good man. The best. Maria's voice cracked. Which is why Victor killed him. Good men don't survive in wars built by people like you and me. She turned to leave, but Wayne's voice stopped her. Maria, if you ever need... He paused, searching for words. If you ever need anything. A job. Money. A place to hide. You call me. No questions asked. I owe you my life tonight. Maria smiled sad, knowing, final. You don't owe me anything. We're even now. She pulled the Glock from her waistband and set it on the ground beside him. 2 rounds left. Just in case. Then she walked away, melting into the shadows with the practiced ease of someone who'd spent 3 years, and perhaps her entire life learning to disappear. She moved along the building's perimeter, shoulders slumped, posture defeated. To the officers rushing past, she was just another traumatized restaurant worker fleeing the violence. One cop stopped her briefly. Miss, are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? Maria shook her head, eyes wide and glassy with perfectly performed shock. I need to go home. Please. I just want to go home. The officer waved her through. She walked 6 blocks before stopping in an alley, pressing her back against cold brick and finally letting herself break. The tears came hot and fierce, 3 years of grief pouring out in silent, shaking sobs. Elias, Victor, Wayne, the bodies in the restaurant, the blood on her hands, all of it crashed down at once. But beneath the grief was something else, something harder. Victor had wanted to reclaim her, to prove she was still his weapon. Instead, she'd proven the opposite, that she could be lethal and still choose mercy, that she could be dangerous and still be human. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Impressive performance tonight, but we both know you're not done. The city's burning, Maria. And only you and I have the tools to rebuild it from the ashes. When you're ready to stop running, you know where to find me. V. Maria deleted the message. Then she pulled the dog tag from beneath her uniform. Elias's dog tag, worn smooth from 3 years of constant touch, and held it in her palm. I'm sorry I blamed the wrong person. She whispered to the metal, to the memory, to the brother who couldn't hear her anymore. I'm sorry I let Victor's poison infect how I saw the world. But I promise you, Elias, I'm going to fix this. Not his way. Not with more violence and control, but with truth. She tucked the dog tag back beneath her shirt, straightened her shoulders, and walked out of the alley. The city stretched before her glittering lights, endless noise, a battlefield disguised as civilization. Somewhere out there, Wayne Harrison was making calls, marshalling forces, preparing to use the drive to broker an impossible peace. Somewhere else, Victor Reyes was planning his next move, already 3 steps ahead, convinced his finest student would eventually return to him. But Maria Owens was done being anyone's weapon, anyone's ghost, anyone's creation. For the first time in 3 years, maybe for the first time in her entire life, she was going to decide for herself what came next. If that line hit you like a punch to the chest, then you understand what survival really costs. Don't scroll past it. Subscribe right now. Honor the fighter who refused to die quietly. The sun rose over Chicago like a wound opening red and raw and unforgiving. Maria watched it from the window of a motel room she'd paid for in cash, using a fake name she'd burned years ago but never quite forgotten. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and broken dreams, the kind of place where people came to disappear and no one asked questions. She'd showered twice, scrubbing away blood that wasn't hers, dust from collapsed ceilings, the phantom weight of violence that clung to skin like smoke. Her uniform lay crumpled on the bathroom floor, black vest, white shirt, both ruined beyond saving. She'd dressed in the only civilian clothes she had, jeans and a gray hoodie from a 24-hour convenience store, both too large, making her look smaller, younger, more forgettable. On the dresser, her phone buzzed constantly. News alerts, updates. The story was everywhere. Massacre at Waitress, 5 dead. Mafia boss missing. Gang violence erupts in upscale Chicago restaurant. Witness describes military-style attack on criminal kingpin. They had it all wrong. They always did. Maria picked up the phone and scrolled through the articles with detached curiosity. The 5 attackers were being labeled as rival gang members. No mention of military training, of coordination, of Victor Reyes. The restaurant staff were described as traumatized victims. Wayne Harrison's name was mentioned, but his location remained unknown. Good. His people had gotten to him. But buried in the 8th paragraph of one article, Maria found what she'd been looking for. Police are seeking to question Maria Owens, 27, a waitress employed at Waitress, whose whereabouts are currently unknown. She is not considered a suspect at this time, but may have information crucial to the investigation. Not considered a suspect. Yet. Maria set the phone down and walked to the window, watching the city wake up, commuters trudging to trains, coffee shops opening their doors, life continuing as if last night hadn't happened, as if the world hadn't shifted on its axis while people slept. A knock at the door froze her in place. Her hand moved instinctively toward her waistband, but the Glock was gone, left with Wayne in that loading dock. She was unarmed, vulnerable, exactly what she'd sworn she'd never be again. Maria. The voice was female, low, familiar. I know you're in there. I'm alone, and I'm not here to hurt you. Maria's mind raced through possibilities, threats, contingencies. That voice, she knew it but couldn't place it. Not police, not Victor's people. Something else. I'm going to slide my ID under the door, the voice continued. Look at it, then decide if you want to let me in. A plastic card appeared beneath the door. Maria picked it up carefully. FBI. Special Agent Rebecca Torres, Organized Crime Division. We have a mutual problem, Agent Torres said through the door. His name is Victor Reyes, and I've been hunting him for 5 years. Maria's hand trembled as she held the ID. 5 years. Before she'd disappeared. Before Elias died. This woman had been chasing Victor even then, and Maria had never known. She opened the door. Agent Rebecca Torres was everything Maria wasn't: polished, professional, wearing a perfectly pressed suit despite the early hour. She was mid-40s, with sharp brown eyes that assessed Maria in a single glance. No judgment, just calculation. You going to invite me in? Torres asked. Maria stepped aside. Torres entered, closed the door, and immediately moved to the window to check the street below. Professional paranoia. Maria recognized it because she shared it. You're not easy to find, Torres said. Took me 3 hours and some very illegal surveillance to track you here. If you're here to arrest me, I'm here to offer you a deal. Torres turned from the window. Victor Reyes has been ghost for half a decade. No confirmed sightings, no solid evidence. He's a rumor, a shadow, a name whispered in intelligence circles. Until last night, when he orchestrated a military-style hit in downtown Chicago and walked away clean. She paused. Except he didn't walk away completely clean. Because you saw him. You know him. And based on the surveillance footage I pulled from outside Waitress, you also engaged his team and survived. Maria's jaw tightened. Surveillance footage. Relax. I'm the only one who's seen it. And I'm the only one who noticed that the traumatized waitresses moved like someone with advanced tactical training. Torres sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded. So here's my question. Who are you really, Maria Owens? The silence stretched. Maria could lie, could maintain the fiction, could walk away from this conversation and disappear into a new identity, a new city, a new life. But she was tired. God, she was so tired of running. I was military intelligence, Maria said quietly. Recruited into a black ops program run by Victor Reyes. He trained me, used me. And when my brother became inconvenient, he killed him and made me believe it was someone else's fault. Torres's expression didn't change, but her eyes sharpened with interest. Your brother, Elias Owens, killed 3 years ago on the south side. You know about that? I know about every death connected to Victor's operations, Torres replied. Elias wasn't random, Maria. He was targeted because Victor needed to break you, remake you, eliminate your emotional attachments. It's his pattern. He finds talented operatives and strips away everything that makes them human. The words were clinical, but Maria heard the rage beneath them. He did this to others. 17 that I can confirm. Probably more I don't know about. Torres leaned forward. Most of them are still working for him. Some are dead. A few, like you, managed to disappear. But you're the only one who's ever faced him and survived on her own terms. I didn't... Maria's voice cracked. I didn't defeat him. I let him walk away. Exactly. Torres smiled grimly. You had him. Could have killed him. And you chose not to. That's not weakness, Maria. That's strategy. Because dead, Victor's just a body. Alive, he's a weapon we can use against everyone he's connected to, every syndicate, every corrupt official, every black ops program he's run for the past 2 decades. Maria felt the trap closing, the familiar pull of purpose, of mission. You want me to help you catch him. I want you to help me destroy everything he's built. Torres stood. But I can't do it through official channels. Victor has people inside the bureau, inside police departments, inside government. Going through proper procedure would just alert him. She met Maria's eyes. I need someone who knows how he thinks, how he operates. Someone he won't see coming because he thinks he's already broken her. You're asking me to become bait. I'm asking you to finish what you started last night. Torres pulled a burner phone from her pocket and set it on the dresser. My number's programmed in. You have 24 hours to decide. After that, I'll have to file my report about the surveillance footage, and your face becomes public. Every cop in Chicago will be looking for you. Maria stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. And if I help you? Then you get what you really want: justice for your brother, closure, and a chance to stop Victor before he remakes some other talented kid into a monster. Torres moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Maria, I read your file from military intelligence. You were brilliant, compassionate, everything Victor pretends to value but actually despises. Don't let him convince you that the weapon he created is who you really are. She left, the door clicking shut with finality. Maria stood alone in the motel room, staring at the burner phone. 24 hours to decide between disappearing forever or walking back into the fire. On the dresser, her original phone buzzed. Another text from unknown. The FBI agent who just left your room? Rebecca Torres? Victor's list. Marked for elimination 3 months ago. If you work with her, she's dead. Just like everyone else you care about. Choose wisely. V. Maria's blood ran cold. He was watching. He was always watching. And now Agent Torres was a target, because she'd tried to recruit the one person who could hurt Victor most. Maria grabbed both phones, the burner and her personal, dropped them in the sink, smashed them with the heel of her boot until they were fragments of plastic and circuitry. Then she gathered her few belongings, walked out of the motel, and disappeared into Chicago's morning crowds. But this time, she wasn't running away. She was running toward something. Toward the one place Victor would never expect her to go, Wayne Harrison's world. Because if Victor wanted to reshape Chicago through violence and control, then Maria would stop him, the only way that mattered, by helping Harrison do what he'd planned all along. Broker peace, expose the syndicates, and destroy Victor's carefully constructed web of power before he could claim a single more victim. Elias's dog tag pressed cold against her chest as she walked, and Maria whispered a promise to her brother's memory. I'm not his weapon anymore. I'm yours, and I'm going to make this right. 3 weeks later, the Chicago Tribune ran a headline that made the entire city pause. 5 major crime syndicates exposed. Unprecedented joint investigation brings down decades of corruption. The article was meticulous. Names, dates, account numbers, evidence so comprehensive and damning that even the most corrupt officials couldn't bury it. Prosecutors scrambled. Politicians resigned. The city's underworld fractured like glass under a hammer. And nowhere in the article was Maria Owens's name mentioned. She read it from a cafe in Seattle, 3,000 miles and a lifetime away from Chicago. Her hair was shorter now, dyed dark, and she wore glasses, She didn't need small changes that transformed her face into something forgettable. She'd chosen Seattle because it rained here the way Chicago had that night at Waitress, because the city was large enough to disappear into, because no one looked twice at quiet women in coffee shops. Her phone, a new one, purchased in cash, untraceable, buzzed with a message from an encrypted number she'd given to only one person. Package delivered. Peace holding. City breathing. Thank you. Tel Biwak. Maria smiled despite herself. Wayne Harrison had done it. Used the drive to expose the syndicates, force cooperation between law enforcement agencies, and leverage himself from criminal kingpin to reluctant cooperating witness. The man who'd built an empire on violence had dismantled it in the name of the wife he'd lost. There was poetry in that. Elias would have appreciated it. She typed a response. Stay safe. Stay honest. Don't make me come back. The reply was immediate. The world's loss if you never do. Maria deleted the conversation, finished her coffee, and closed her laptop. Through the cafe window, she watched the rain-streaked glass, pedestrians hurrying past with umbrellas, the endless movement of a city that didn't know her name and never would. Agent Rebecca Torres had survived Victor's assassination attempt barely. Maria had made one anonymous call before leaving Chicago, warning her about the threat, giving her just enough information to go underground. Torres had messaged her once since then, through channels so encrypted they'd take governments years to crack. He's hunting, getting desperate. When you're ready to end this, call me. But Maria wasn't ready. Not yet. Because ending Victor meant confronting the part of herself that he'd created, the part that still remembered his lessons, still heard his voice in moments of crisis, still moved with the precision he drilled into her muscle memory. She'd spent 3 weeks in Seattle learning to be ordinary again. She worked at a bookstore now, quiet, anonymous, spending her days shelving novels and recommending mysteries to customers who never suspected she was living one. At night, she practiced being still, not the stillness of a predator waiting to strike, but the stillness of a person at peace. It was harder than any mission Victor had ever assigned. But slowly, incrementally, Maria was learning to sleep without jolting awake at every sound, learning to laugh without calculating exits, learning to touch the dog tag around her neck and remember Elias's smile instead of his death. One evening, as she was closing the bookstore, an older man approached, well-dressed, carrying himself with the careful posture of someone who'd survived violence and learned to hide it. He picked up a copy of The Count of Monte Cristo, studied the cover, then looked at Maria with eyes that had seen too much. "Excuse me, miss, do you have any recommendations for someone starting over?" Maria's breath caught. The question was innocuous. The eyes were not. She recognized that look, the weight of a past that wouldn't let go, the desperate hope that books might offer answers life couldn't. She could deflect, could play the part of the simple bookseller, could protect her anonymity like she'd protected it for 3 weeks. Instead, she smiled, genuine, warm, human. "Starting over is less about finding new stories," she said quietly, "and more about deciding which parts of your old story you keep." She gestured to the book in his hands. Dantes spent years planning revenge, but the real freedom came when he learned to let go. The man's eyes studied her with sudden intensity, as if seeing past the glasses and the dyed hair to the ghost beneath. Wise words for someone so young. "Not wisdom," Maria replied, "just experience." He nodded slowly, purchased the book, and left. Maria watched him go, her heart pounding. She'd been seen, really seen, and she hadn't run, hadn't pulled a weapon or calculated threats. She'd just been human. It felt like victory. That night, Maria sat in her small apartment, one room, minimal furniture, everything she owned fitting in a single backpack, and pulled out a notebook. She'd been writing in it for 3 weeks, processing everything that had happened, trying to make sense of the woman she'd been and the woman she was becoming. She turned to a fresh page and wrote, "Dear Elias." The letter poured out 3 years of guilt, grief, and unspoken words. She told him about Victor, about the truth of his death, about the rage she'd carried and finally released. She told him about Wayne Harrison, about choosing mercy over vengeance, about learning that justice and revenge weren't the same thing. And she told him about Seattle, about the bookstore, about the small, ordinary moments that felt like miracles after years of violence. "I don't know if you'd be proud of me," she wrote. "I'm not the girl you knew. I've done things you'd hate, become someone you might not recognize. But I'm trying, Eli. I'm trying to be the sister you deserved instead of the weapon Victor created. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all any of us can do, try to be better than what broke us. She signed the letter, folded it carefully, and placed it in an envelope she'd never send. Then she hung Elias's dog tag on the wall above her bed, not hidden beneath clothing anymore, but displayed, honored, remembered not as a weight but as a reminder. Her phone buzzed one last time that night. Another encrypted message, this one from a number she didn't recognize. 5 men came to erase a name that night. They failed not because the Mafia boss fought back, but because the Waitress did. And when the smoke cleared, Chicago learned that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the gun, but the one no one ever noticed. Sleep well, Ghost. You've earned it. A friend. Maria stared at the message for a long time, trying to parse its meaning. Not Victor, the tone was wrong. Not Torres, too poetic. Not Wayne, he wouldn't sign as a friend. Then she understood. It was someone who'd been there that night. Someone who'd watched her move, fight, survive. Someone who saw her not as a weapon or a waitress, but as something else entirely. A witness. A guardian. A reminder that even in her invisibility, she'd been seen. Maria deleted the message, turned off her phone, and looked out at the Seattle skyline, glittering lights against dark water, the city breathing in rhythm with her own steady heartbeat. Somewhere out there, Victor Reyes was still hunting, still building, still believing his finest student would eventually return to him. Somewhere else, Wayne Harrison was navigating the impossible work of building peace from the ruins of violence. And somewhere between those extremes was Maria Owens, no longer a ghost, no longer a weapon, but something she was still learning to define. She closed the curtains, locked the door, and went to bed. Not because she felt safety was an illusion she'd abandoned years ago, but because she'd finally learned the difference between hiding and healing. And for the first time since Elias died, Maria Owens slept through the night without dreaming of blood. 5 men came to erase a name that night. They failed not because the Mafia boss fought back, but because the Waitress did. And when the smoke cleared, Chicago learned that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the gun, but the one no one ever noticed. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, you're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.